Hey everybody, Eric Grenier here with Philippe J. Fournier for this week's episode of The Numbers. Philippe, how are we doing? How are we doing this week?
Good morning, Eric. I'm doing very well. I feel like my week is over with this. This is like the cherry on top. I had a crazy week for those who follow Quebec media. We have lots of Quebec numbers, but we have numbers like across the board. We have federal numbers, but we have lots of provincial numbers. Nominations that went wrong. We have independence polls. We have tons to talk about, Eric. And by the way, I will have a quiz for you later, a listener suggestion quiz.
Okay.
Where would you like to start today, Eric?
It's
tough, huh?
Yeah, well, I wrote about it on the Writ today. There's tons of stuff happening in Ottawa in a governance kind of way, like policies and legislation and all this sorts of stuff. But a lot of the political action lately does seem to be in the provinces. So I actually think this is where we're going to start. We're going to talk especially about Ontario. We got some new polling. We got that nomination and what that means for the OLP leadership. But we had news yesterday in Alberta. And it's always good to lead with the news. And the news was that there was a court case. So I'll try to explain it as best as I can. I haven't followed every in and out. But the petition that was put forward by the separatists in Alberta, which got over 300,000 signatures, which is well above the threshold needed to be considered for a referendum. The validation of the signatures was put on hold while a court case was looking to see if the referendum question violated Indigenous rights and treaty rights and these kinds of things. And the court decided yesterday that yes, it did. So they quashed more or less quashed the referendum question and its ability to be put on the ballot. Now, the people who put forward the petition and it seems the Premier Danielle Smith are going to appeal the decision because they say it's anti-democratic. But it does mean that once again there is a little bit of extra uncertainty and intrigue when it comes to the potential for an independence referendum in Alberta by October. There are going to be 9 questions. They're all immigration related, going to be on October 19th. 9 is an odd number. Why not make it 10? And it does feel like the intention was to add an independence question there. And we don't really know what's going to happen here. We don't know what kind of delays this could put on it. There was also the other petition that was put forward by Thomas Lukaszuk, who is a former PC cabinet minister. And his question, I think, doesn't have any of these kinds of implications because the other petition was, should Alberta separate and become an independent country, which obviously has lots of implications, including for treaty rights and these kinds of things. The Lukaszuk petition was, should Alberta remain in Canada? Which is a bit more of a what do you think? How are you feeling about things? It has less implications because if the answer is no, then it's okay, then what does that mean? So that could still end up being a referendum question either way. So we could be heading towards an Alberta independence referendum within 5 months, which is kind of nuts. And we had some new numbers that came from Probe Research on referendums, on independence, and on voting intentions. Alberta has just been a roller coaster for the last 15 years in politics.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, also, and I think many pollsters still struggle to accurately... so I'll defend pollsters on one thing. Sometimes it's tough to poll, not because of the work you do, but because of the people you poll. If you poll people that are anti-system, you get the Trump effect south of the border where you miss 2-3% of Trump voters because they won't answer polls. It's a small effect in Canada. We know that instinctively, right of center parties usually are underestimated, but not by much. It's usually well within the margin of error, but it's always on the low end, right? And we saw it with the Conservatives, the federal Conservatives last year. I checked my final average was 39.7, and they had 41.3. It's reasonable, but it's still below. And now we have these polls that show the Probe Research poll has the UCP at 46%. This is not what a myriad of other pollsters have measured lately. And also, it's a poll that has the Alberta Liberals at 6%. So what do we mentioned this before, and I don't want to rail on this, but 12% combined for the Progressive Tory and for the Liberals in Alberta is not happening. So I'm not sure what to make of the rest of this poll. The independence question is there, but when you look at the voting intentions, and they're so skewed because of the other parties, what do you make of the rest of the poll? But anyway, on the numbers, so 71 against Alberta separation, 20% in favor of Alberta separation. The rest is undecided. Usually, if you're undecided, you're on the Remain side, usually, with Quebec experience. This is a bit on the low end of what we have seen from other pollsters. I think the consensus seems to be around 25-75. But what did you make of these latest numbers from Probe? Like, what is your take from these numbers specifically?
Yeah, I with the voting intention stuff, I agree. It's a little bit of it's a bit like, what do you do? These parties exist, but do people really know what they're saying when they're going to vote for the Alberta Liberals or the Alberta Progressive Tory Party?
Yeah.
Though I just see that the Probe Research report has their logo, and it's not bad. I don't mind it. It says Tory Party, and it has anyway. So it had 6%, Alberta Liberals 6%. The NDP was at 39%. So the NDP usually is somewhere around that. So that is not too unusual.
Yeah.
And sure, maybe the UCP would actually be a little bit higher if, as you've mentioned, pollsters tend to have difficulty finding some of these voters. Yeah, you could add 5 points to the UCP and it wouldn't be a shock, right? Like you mentioned how in the federal election, the polling average nationally was a little bit undershooting the Conservatives, but in Alberta, it undershot it by quite a bit, which is a normal thing. It actually happens pretty frequently. So when I see that the support for separation is 20%, you could I could imagine that the reality is it could be more like 25 or 27.
Yeah.
It's clearly not 40, 45, 50, right? Like the polls would never be off that much that they'd be missing something. So in the end, we're still seeing a scenario where probably 2/3 of Albertans in a referendum held today would vote against separation. So that's not too much of a surprise. And I don't think it does, like, that doesn't really change anything. It does still bring up the question, why is the Alberta government under Danielle Smith and the UCP trying so hard to have this referendum? Because it does not seem like it's what people want. It's not, yes, they got the signatures, but it's a tiny proportion of the population that is pushing the government to hold a referendum. If you remember, I'm just reading a book about the 2000 election. One of the reasons that the Canadian Alliance had a lot of problems in that election is that one of their platform policies was, if you could get 3% of voters to sign a petition, you would have a national referendum on that issue. Now, if you remember, Rick Mercer made a joke about it because he said he started a petition to have a referendum on whether Stockwell Day should change his first name to Doris, which would make him Doris Day. It was a little bit juvenile now when we think about it 25 or 26 years later. But anyway, that notion is still strange to me. And it does seem also that it's strange to a lot of voters, because the Probe research poll asked, here, I'll read the question.
Yeah.
Premier Danielle Smith has announced Albertans will vote on 9 referendum questions in October 2026. Most of the questions about immigration and the Canadian Constitution. When you think of this entire referendum process, what single word best describes how you feel about it? And Probe research found that 51% had a negative reaction, only 27% had a positive reaction. So Albertans aren't like, oh, good, we have these referendums. Even on the immigration questions, when they're polled individually, seem to be more on the pro side. Like people will generally vote to limit immigration or have stricter rules for immigration these days.
Yeah.
But Albertans don't seem happy that they have to do it. And I just wonder if the same thing is going to happen if they go ahead with the independence referendum. It might make a very small portion of the population happy to have it, but a lot of Albertans aren't going to be all that keen on it. And it's still a big question to me how the UCP holds together when they have wings within it that are separatist, wings within it that are federalist, and a leader who says she's going to be on the federalist side, but I'm not sure how that works. It is just still a little bit of a mess. And even if the referendum does fail, which seems likely to happen, I'm not sure how the UCP picks up the pieces after that, because as we saw in Quebec, losing a referendum does not mean the issue goes away.
Oh no, no, absolutely. There's no such thing as a referendum without consequences, whatever the result. It's funny that you say that, because you say, how will the UCP stick together regardless of the outcome? So I was in Ottawa last week, and I spoke to many folks at the Canada Strong and Free conference, and many of the people there.
Just so people know, this is a
Canada.
kind of conservative
Yes.
networking conference. Used to be the Manning Conference.
That's right. I went there, of course, as media, just to make sure we understand each other, right? Like, we go to all the conventions in DP Liberal, when the PQ, Quebec, like that, right? So a lot of people told me there, the way the UCP can stick together is by playing both sides all the time, which is basically what Madame Smith has been doing. This is not an accident. This is on purpose. And this is not a grand conspiracy. She wants to appeal to her whole base, which is a faction of factions. And the way you stick it together and make it work is by trying to find stuff that pleases everybody. Long term, of course, is it sustainable? Maybe not, but...
Long term, can you make everybody happy?
No. But Danielle Smith won a majority in 23. I think you and I agree that, barring something really unexpected, if an election was held today or even this fall, or next spring in Alberta, Danielle Smith and UCP would win handily. So I guess what she's doing is politically sound, even though in the grander picture, it may be risky for the country. I mean, you're playing with matches, right? With the whole country.
Yeah.
But
I had it explained to me that this was one perspective of why the UCP is going this way. And I'm not sure if I agree with the explanation, but it is plausible on itself. That there's a chunk of the electorate that is hardcore separatist. They want to go, and nothing's going to change their views. And the UCP has them in the tent right now, but doesn't need them in the longer term because they're concentrated in ridings that the UCP would win anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then there's another chunk. There's another chunk of the electorate that's, based on these polls, probably 15, 20%, that is open to the idea of sovereignty, open to the idea of independence, but not really that convinced about it, but they're open to the idea. And the notion is that if the UCP can play both sides, it can keep that 20% at least happy that they're being respected, that their choice is going to get an airing, and that if the referendum loses, those people will at least be like, well, we got to express ourselves, we'll stay within the tent in the longer term. Yeah. And that if instead the UCP was rejecting referendum, rejecting independence, kind of dismissing the separatists, that 20% might get pushed to the 5 to 10% of hardliners. So it is a way to try to keep the party together.
Yes, it is.
But not 100%. Necessarily Alberta or the broader, public together. So it does make some sense within the party, but it is, like you said, it does seem like it is the kind of thing that could easily blow up in the party's face, because for some people, showing some openness to at least having the referendum, having the independence voice heard, does suggest that other chunk of the electorate, which represents 60 to 70% of all Albertans and represents, I'd say, maybe half of UCP voters, might think that was a kind of a reckless, risky move. And we'll find out who will end up being right. But it does seem like, as you said, playing with matches, playing with fire. And sometimes that blows up in someone's face.
One gentleman over there in Ottawa did tell me, and that was seared into my brain when I listened to him. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's seared right here. And he said, my first choice would be to stay in Canada with a conservative provincial government. But if the Conservatives are splitting and we find ourselves led by the NDP, I'm voting to separate, and I hope we become the 51st state. And I was like, yeah, but you can't just, if you don't like the result of one election, just say, okay, let's blow up the whole country and join the United States. That doesn't work. Which I'm going back to the numbers, right?
Because also, if you, for that person, one day, presumably the Democrats will be back in office in Washington too. So you can just keep going back and forth between the two countries.
To what extent do you agree or disagree with the following statement about Alberta potentially separating from Canada? And the statement is, if Alberta separates from Canada, it should join the United States. Now, it's a tiny minority. It's 16%. Well, tiny. It's not that tiny, but it's still a minority. 16% agree. 77% don't agree. Among UCP voters, 27% agrees. This is what Danielle Smith has to contend with. A quarter of her base would go, okay, let's join the United States. Now, again, it's a small percent of the population. We know that they're loud. We know that they're organized. They just got their signatures for, whatever way they got it. But she has to contend with a quarter of her base saying, yeah, we should just join the United States. Yeah, I talk about big tent parties. Yeah. That's a big stretch.
I do understand, like, when you look at the polling numbers, it seems pretty clear that the UCP has the ability to win an election and lose some support and still be able to win the election. Like, they have that room for maneuver, but I do still think there are some broader electoral concerns or risks, vulnerabilities for the party. The Probe Research poll found that 74% of Albertans agree with the statement. The discussion about Alberta separation is a distraction from other important issues facing the province. And 66% agreed with this discussion about Alberta separating is hurting the province's economy. Can you imagine? Okay, there's a referendum. I don't know. The referendum's on the book. What if a story comes out about like an important oil or gas industry saying, we're going to move our headquarters to somewhere else? We're going to move it to Houston. We're going to move it, because we're not sure what the situation here is. Like that, just like, two people from Quebec have this perspective. Those kinds of things hurt the PQ back in '76. They hurt them in the early '90s as well. Those big companies moving out of Montreal because of the uncertainty around the referendum.
Yeah.
It does seem like there's broader risks here, and in the longer term, the UCP might, maybe not, but might regret having been worried about that chunk of voters rather than the broader electorate in the province.
That 2015 election hurt the psyche of a lot of conservative voters. They saw two right of center parties getting about 25% of the vote apiece and getting beaten by the NDP. They said never again. Yeah. And now they have to contend with that. So those numbers are fascinating. It's still, I don't want to be careful not to overanalyze strategy here. Danielle Smith, what she did yesterday by saying that they will appeal is not surprising. Again, for her survival, in the survival of her party, she has to get those voters. You say, oh, they would win without them. It could snowball. And then they lose, and then the NDP or some other progressive party eventually wins, and those conservatives are, without...
Start the process all over again.
Yeah. So, anyway, let's talk... Alberta went from the most boring province politically to one of the most exciting in the past decade and a half. Huh?
Yeah.
It's not over yet. So,
and all of this kind of colors as well the discussions between Danielle Smith and Mark Carney on pipelines. There's supposed to be some sort of announcement coming up tomorrow. Yeah. That's also interesting, right? If she is using it as leverage to get things from the federal government and the Liberals in Ottawa more receptive to that than they used to be under Justin Trudeau and wanting to at least give the Federation a win from an Alberta perspective, it's having an impact beyond just internal dynamics within the UCP. So really fascinating to watch over the next few months.
By the way, you may have read that, but at the Canada Strong and Free conference, Danielle Smith was there, and I listened to her speech, and then she gave us a scrum it was quite a long scrum. She took questions from media. She had the opportunity on a silver platter to go after Mark Carney and after the Liberal government, and she did not. Even she wasn't prompted by some, right of center leading media saying how, do you think how bad the liberal government in Ottawa? And she had the opportunity and she did not. She refrained from attacking because I think she knew that a deal was forthcoming. And she was extremely prudent in her approach, which I don't think had been the case in past years. They were not prudent when it was Justin Trudeau and Monsieur Guilbeault. By the way, she mentioned Monsieur Guilbeault, former environment ministers. He got the biggest applause at that conference because he was not anymore the environment ministers.
But the last standing stand-in for Trudeau that's still somewhere within Liberal ranks. All right. Speaking of premiers who are friendly with the Prime Minister and things happening that are interesting to watch, Ontario politics. Hey, we often slag Ontario politics on this podcast.
Yes, we do.
For being dull as oatmeal, I guess, or I don't know, watching paint dry, this kind of thing. Polling numbers that never change. Ford's approval ratings that never seem to have any real relation with any voting intentions. We got an Ontario Liberal leadership race that is a little spicy.
A little spicy and strange.
And we have actual polling numbers that suggest things might be moving in Ontario. Should we start with the Scarborough Southwest nomination or move to the polls? What do you?
So I was extremely busy last weekend preparing for a big week in Quebec politics. We'll get to that in a minute. New numbers in Quebec that are insane. So I saw the headlines. I saw the result. I didn't see the process. So Monsieur Nate Erskine-Smith, I got it. Erskine-Smith lost the nomination process in Scarborough Southwest. There seems to be, and he didn't seem to agree with the result, obviously, which is never a good look. But he may have a case that some strange stuff happened in there. Now, Eric, I know you followed this more closely than I did. So, what are the what is your takeaway from what's happening out there? It's not. I know it's not over, but what has happened so far?
All right. Well, just to catch people up, Nate Erskine-Smith was a runner-up in the 2023 Ontario Liberal leadership. He has said he's planning to run for the Ontario Liberal leadership this time. And as part of that, he is promised to resign his seat of Beaches East York, which after this nomination defeat, he still says he's going to do. So that by-election is still going to happen federally. But he was going to resign his seat in Beaches East York, run for the nomination for the Ontario Liberals in Scarborough Southwest, which was vacated because Dolly Begum, the Ontario NDP MPP, resigned to run for Mark Carney in the by-elections that happened not too long ago. So he was going to win that nomination and then run in the by-election, win it, and put himself in a really great position for the November OLP leadership as an MPP, someone with a commitment to the party, and, showing that he can win. Bit of a problem that he failed to win the nomination. So this has been a really hotly contested nomination race. There was thousands of members who were signed up. In the end, the number who voted, some were stricken from the rolls, but the number who ended up voting was 1,400, which is pretty big for a nomination race for a party with 14 MPPs at Queen's Park. And there was all these stories about Nate Erskine-Smith asking some of the other people maybe to not run, to join his team or be involved. There was people who, as I said, were stricken from the list before the last days. There's clearly a group of people within the OLP that do not like Erskine-Smith and do not wish for him to be the leader, and they've made their voices heard rather loudly. And then in this nomination battle, there was a couple of candidates in, and at least two of the ones who were in it more or less had it was reported they had a pact that, they could rank them each other first, second. And in the end, Asanul Hafiz, he won with a margin of 19 votes, again, out of the 1,400 or so that were voted, and it was like a second or third ballot win or something like that. So that first was a blow for Nate Erskine-Smith to not win the nomination, and he has since raised allegations, and he has made a notice of appeal to the OLP, citing a number of irregularities. Now, what they say happened was there's lots of people who seem to be being directed to vote. People were taking photos of their votes. which they say is in other countries is a sign of vote buying because it would be proof that you actually voted for the person, so you could get paid for it. They alleged that people were voting without really having any idea of what their address was, using lots of different ways to prove their address, including like an Amazon order, things like that. And it should be stated as well as the Ontario Liberals, and I think it might be the case with other parties, but they allow people who are 14 and older to vote, citizens, permanent residents, temporary people, like students or temporary foreign workers. So they say there was a lot of these irregularities. They say that the number, I don't quite understand, but the number of people who were marked down as having voted was 34, either more or less than the number who actually voted.
Yeah.
The OLP is saying that this was fair. They're going to look at it and they'll see. Nate Erskine-Smith says this was not fair, and he says that even if the OLP overturns this result, he will not run again. So he's saying, like, just figure out the nomination thing. It's not clear if he's still going to run for the leadership. It's not clear what this means for him, what it means for the party, and it is just a bit of a mess any way you slice it.
Boy. Yeah. I mean, any contestations? Anytime the loser contest a riding, they may have a case or not. But in the grand scheme of things, it looks bad.
Yes.
It looks bad for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So you have to think that the Ontario NDP, Ontario PCs are not too unhappy about all this.
Well,
turmoil,
Ford's
right?
quote was that, they can't run a nomination, they want to run the government. It's an easy one, low-hanging fruit.
Also, the thing is, I wonder if this story will really have legs. I know it will have legs locally, but that Léger poll in Ontario did ask about favorables towards public figures, including the main party leaders. Main party leaders. I'm surprised to see that Nate Erskine-Smith has a favorability of 12% and unfavorability of 16%, and 60% have no idea who this person is.
I'm not surprised by that.
You're not. I'm not surprised because it was Ontario voters that were polled, and they don't seem to be much engaged, right? Low 40s turnout rate in past elections. But this is still a person that was in the previous leadership race. He's been an MP. He's been vocal. I don't know. You're not surprised about this at all? That's basically unknown?
I mean, people like us know MPs, know leadership contenders and all this kind of stuff. But, Marit Stiles... Marit Stiles is the opposition leader. She's been there for a while. 40% didn't know who she was. So I'm not surprised that they wouldn't know who Nate Erskine-Smith was. But when you say it looks bad, it looks bad for Erskine-Smith because he lost, and also if you're not getting too much into it, it does look like he's being a bit of a sore loser. And regardless of whether that's true or not, if the nomination was sketchy, that's not good. Even if someone lost and they're bitter about it. If they have a reason to be bitter about it, beyond just having lost, it still matters. So I wonder if this is going to have any impact on the Liberals, because that kind of thing is going to be making the rounds now. It looks like internal fighting. People are usually very unimpressed by internal fighting within parties. And we see that, in the polls. You mentioned the Léger poll. So we had a Léger poll this past week, a Main Street poll this past week. In Léger, it was 39 for the PCs, 34 for the Liberals, 17 for the NDP. Main Street had 35 for the PCs, 31 for the Liberals, 24 for the NDP.
24, yeah.
But we have seen a drop in support for the PCs since the fall. Liaison had a big drop. Palace had a big drop. Abacus had a big drop.
Yeah.
So this is a thing that's being picked up across the board. And a lot of it, you have to think, is, discontent with Ford and the PCs, but also... Carney looking pretty good to a lot of Ontarians right now. A lot of polls have him now 50 or plus.
Yeah.
And some brand kind of...
brand confusion? You think that's
not brand confusion, but...
Because Ford and Carney are getting along just fine.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe you don't need to vote Liberal. You can just have Ford.
I don't know. This tightening seems like the wear and tear of time. There were some unforced errors from the Ontario government, the Ford government. I mean, the plane seems to have caught the imagination of at least some voters. The jet plane whose order was cancelled, I think. But yeah.
Although still, in the end, they managed to get their money back, but they still had some costs related. I think it was supposed to be somewhere close to $200,000.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, I guess wasn't the plane 30 million? So, okay, 200,000, maybe it's pocket change, but it's not pocket change to the average people.
Well, it would have been zero if they hadn't gone ahead with this in the first place.
That's right. So this Léger poll, you said 39% for the PCs, 34% for the Ontario Liberals. This seems like a close race. It's 5 points. Did you look at the regionals? Metro
they're
Toronto,
still pretty good for the PCs, eh?
Liberals up by 1 point in the 416. GTA, the PCs up 18 points. Hamilton Niagara, three-way tie, considering the sample size. The Southwest, 40 PC, 29 Liberal. This is a massive PC win. So yeah, the OLP is doing a little better. It may be brand confusion because we don't know why, really. And clearly there's also, I mean, we won't get into that right now, but there's this disagreement on where the Ontario NDP stands. Because from 17 to 24, that's a big stretch for a third party. So
yeah.
A third party that is the official opposition in Queen's Park.
Yeah. So, yeah, a couple things we'll keep an eye on for Ontario. One is whether the PCs are going to continue to be dropping. And also what this is going to, all this leadership stuff for the Ontario Liberals. As I said, they seem to have an opportunity. We saw a few polls not too long ago that the Liberals were either tied or ahead of the PCs. Yeah. So you wonder if all this kind of stuff might have an impact on it. So that'll be something to watch. But Ontario, getting spicy politically.
Well, spicier.
Well, it's maybe a bit of pepper. It's nothing. It's not cayenne. Not yet. Before we do, should we do some? Let's maybe the federal numbers, or
we should talk about Quebec. While we're on the provinces, we should talk quickly about Quebec. We will do. Eric and I are planning to do an episode of Les Chiffres next week. Not sure exactly when, but we'll get back to you on this because we have lots of Quebec numbers. So there were 2 polls released on the same day, and it was a coincidence because those media did not speak to each other. It was L'Actualité, commissioned by me. And La Presse now has a polling partner. It's Synopsis. A lot of people don't know Synopsis Research in Quebec, but political parties know them. They've been around for, I think, 9 years, but they just never had a media partner. Now they do with La Presse. So the results were very close to each other. Let's start with Palace. 29% for the Parti Québécois, 28% for the Liberals, 19% for the CAQ. So this is up 5 points for the CAQ and a drop of 4 points for the Quebec Liberals. Synopsis, we don't have a point of comparison. It's their first poll with La Presse, but 30 PQ, 30 Liberal, 18 CAQ. Basically, same numbers as Palace.
Yeah.
The CAQ has a pulse. It's still on the ground, badly bleeding and not doing too well, but it has a pulse. It's not completely dead and rotting just yet. Eric, the PQ would win the most seats with those numbers, either poll. But what did you make of those Quebec polls that we saw yesterday?
The jump for the CAQ back to a level where they become a factor is the interesting thing here. The fact that the PQ and the Liberals are still tied. You know, the Léger poll that we saw that had a Liberal drop, they were still effectively within a couple of points of each other. So still seeing that there's this very close race between the PQ and the Liberals, somewhere around 30%. Because of the PQ support among Francophones, they still win the most seats. But it's interesting because with the PQ and the Liberals down, well, the Liberals up, I guess, but like with the two parties around 30%,
yeah, the
CAQ getting closer to 20 then makes it a huge mess, right? Like in terms of seats and stuff like that. We are, I will say mercifully, because it's weird if a party could win a majority government with less than 30% of the vote, but we do seem to be moving more comfortably into minority territory of some kind. When you have this many parties with this level of support, sure, because of the vagaries of it, you could have a surprise majority, like, parties winning a bunch of seats with 32%, that kind of thing, which is going to happen unless these numbers change. But it does change the dynamic in the province. Christine Fréchette, the new premier, her numbers are okay. So she has given them a bit of a boost. And it's still, as you said, the PQ's to lose, but it's not so unreasonable or implausible that they could now, which is a huge change from where things were.
Okay. I'll push back on this, my friend. It would be unreasonable to see the PQ lose. I just don't see necessarily a majority. Now, I think at this point right now, the question is PQ majority or PQ minority. So I ran my numbers yesterday and I published it on QC125 and 338 Canada, Quebec. I have 96% chances of a PQ government, plurality or majority. There's nobody can catch the PQ with these numbers. You would have to see the CAQ north of 25 to have any chance of maybe splitting the vote, and then the Liberals win with 45 seats or something. But the PQ would win an election handily with this. That's not even. The Liberals' ceiling matches the PQ's floor in my projection. So yeah, the PQ would win, in any scenario, even if you wiggle the numbers 2-3 points. It's just that, the majority, having a majority with 29% of the vote, with a party, Parti Québécois, who wants to, of course, we know, secede from Canada, but who has promised electoral reform only in an independent Quebec. You're not getting electoral reform or proportional representation in the province of Quebec. You would have it maybe in the country of Quebec, and both polls had independence numbers. They match each other. It's around 30 to 70, basically. So it's not close. They're a bit higher than we saw in Alberta, but not by that much. As you said, this is a complete mess. The Quebec Liberals have had a tough month. Charles Milliard, his personal numbers in the Palace poll dropped significantly. He went from, I should have pulled this, but his positives, his favorables, were in the low 30s, and now they're in the low 20s 1 month later. So it was a tough month. The preferred premier, the leader of the preferred premier, has 25%, and it's Plamondon, the leader. We have preferred premier in the Nanos tracker. Pierre Poilievre has 25%. Right? So it's a fractured electorate. It will be hell for you and I to model this. It'll be a lot of fun, though. But the next few weeks, I'm looking forward to see the next Léger poll. We should have also June polls before the summer break, but the summer break won't be that long. I figured very early August we will enter election mode. And Madame Fréchette has had a good start. She also had a friendly start. She hasn't been tested as much. She did tours. She went to the United States. Now she's going to Paris. She's doing basically what Marc Carney is doing. But once you face the House, or National Assembly in this case, I think it could get harder. But we'll see. Nothing is set in stone in Quebec. We are far from the 22 election where we all knew who was going to win.
And that is just my last little point I was going to make. I agree with these numbers. PQ wins. But it's now in a place where these numbers are not going to necessarily hold.
Of course.
There's that margin for error that they had when they were at 40 and had a 20-point lead. They don't have it anymore. So I'm just saying that now it's in a realm where just a little bit of movement.
Yep.
The PQ before needed a lot of movement to lose. Now it's just a little bit. That's why I'm saying this election could go either way. All right. Federal numbers a bit?
Yeah, quickly. They're not that interesting this week. Sorry. We're glad to have them, but it's Research Co.
We prefer that
BC.
you give us real numbers than interesting numbers, pollsters. That's what we would like.
For Research Co., 46 Liberal, 31 Conservative. Abacus, 46 Liberal, 36 Conservative. Liaison, 44 to 33. Nanos, 46 to 33. These are the federal numbers, and there were federal numbers in Quebec only from Synopsis. A 22-point lead for the federal Liberals in Quebec. Is there anything that struck out to you? We are in the double-digit lead on average? We are in that territory federally, Eric. Anything that struck out from you?
No, and maybe that's the thing that stands out. There hasn't been any movement. We've now been kind of settling in this place where the Liberals are somewhere around 45, depending on the poll. Even, Abacus also has the 10-point lead now for the Liberals, not really seeing that much of a difference. And the NDP, no lift off. If anything, these numbers are starting to look a little poorer, right? Because we saw from Nanos, which used to be the pollster that was reliably showing the NDP in double digits, now has them at 9. Only had 3.5% support for Avi Lewis as preferred prime minister, which is a number that Research Co. also found. They only had 4% for Lewis. So really just not seeing anything change, which is good for Carney, but is bad for Poilievre and it's bad for Lewis. And one of the things that really struck me from the Abacus poll is that they have had in the past, they ask your priorities, and then and then they break down who people would vote for among those who prioritize those things, right? So sometimes I hear people talk about how, the Conservatives are leading on immigration. They're leading on immigration among people who prioritize immigration. You have to remember that when you're looking at these numbers. But on all of the top 4 issues, the Liberals were ahead. Not only on Donald Trump, they had a 37-point lead. On healthcare, they had a 13-point lead. But on the cost of living, it was 4-point lead. I know it's just effectively a tie, but the Conservatives usually used to have a lead on that. And on the economy, the Liberals had a 2-point lead. So even on those issues that the Conservatives are supposed to have as their advantage, that once the discussion turns to the economy and cost of living, that they could expect to move ahead. Even on those issues, Abacus is showing a small Liberal lead. Research Co. also showed Mark Carney preferred over Pierre Poilievre on every issue tested, including on the economy. So I don't know where the party goes from here, Poilievre. At that Canada Strong and Free, were you there on the day that Poilievre was there?
No, I was there the day after. I missed the Poilievre. But, anyway, I did
he more or less,
a lot of reviews.
He more or less said, I'm not changing, and that was about it. Oh, and also as just a tiny little pedantic thing, and I wrote about it this week, he's been saying recently that he got 8.3 million votes.
Yes.
He got 8.1, and I've heard it repeated by some journalists and stuff. He got 8.1. You can check that. That's verifiable. He did not get 8.3. Forgive him for making a mistake. I'm sure it's unintentional, because I heard him also a month ago say 8.2 and 8.3 in the same press conference.
Keeps going up?
Yes. Anyway, it's 8.1. Still a big, impressive number, but it's the correct number. Anyway,
he had 41. He had 41.3%. Maybe that 3 figure. Yeah, it was there. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, 8.1 million. Okay, very well.
All right. Do you want to move on to the quiz?
I have a quiz for you, my friend. It's a short quiz. Again, I was extremely busy today, but I'm never too busy to have a quiz, especially when listeners of the Numbers podcast help me. When they help me, I really like that. So this week, I would like to thank, his name is Monsieur DeWitt. Or Devitt, Burton. I'll call you Burton. Thank you for sending your submission. I'm not sure I answered you yet, but I'm using your stuff right now. Well, some of your stuff. I'm not using the whole thing, but you sent me really good information that I verified, and now I'm making a quiz. Eric, it's a by-election theme quiz.
Oh boy.
Do you know your by-elections?
I know some, yes.
You know some of them. Okay. So I'm basing this off Burton. Thank you for your submission. So Eric, there are 5 questions and a total of 7 points to get from this quiz. I think gold should be, I'll give you one free. Gold will be 6, silver will be 5, bronze will be 4, but bronze would be kind of poor on this quiz.
Okay.
Okay, let's go. Number 1, this week's quiz. Eric, what future member of Brian Mulroney's cabinet resigned his seat so that Mulroney could run in a by-election after he won the PC leadership in 1983? Now, we mentioned this by-election last week. You remember the writing?
Yes, I do. And I actually have a correction to make from last week's quiz. I'll get to it in a second.
Okay.
But I believe that the answer here, because it was Central Nova, and Central Nova was the future riding of Peter MacKay, because his father used to have that riding, and his name was Elmer MacKay. So I'm going to guess it was Elmer MacKay.
You have the point. This is correct. Elmer MacKay resigned his seat and in the 1984 election ran again because Monsieur Mulroney went to Manicouagan, I think it was, in the Côte-Nord of Quebec, and won again. What is the correction from last week?
You had a question about how many prime ministers at some point in their political careers represented a riding in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
And there was another one. It was Joe Clark. He had won a by-election in King's Hants before the 2000 election. He was there for a very brief amount of time, and it was during his second stint as prime minister, which is maybe, or as leader, so which is maybe why he missed it. But Joe Clark was also very briefly a Nova Scotia
Very
MP.
interesting. So, but you got that question right, though.
Yes. Right? So now I have a bonus point. So.
Right, that's right. That you can keep in the bank for future quizzes. It's like, okay. Very well, you got the first one. Eric, number 2. The Reform Party / Canadian Alliance, in all of its history, won 3 by-elections. I would like to know the names of the winners, and if you can, the ridings.
So the Reform Party and the Canadian Alliance.
Yep. In their whole history, they won 3 by-elections.
All right. Well, the first one was in Beaver River. I think that was the name of it. And it was Deborah Gray.
And that is correct.
Okay. I know that maybe the last one was Stockwell Day winning in Okanagan, Coquihalla in 2000, I think.
And that is correct.
But what's the third? Oh, I guess the third would be Stephen Harper winning in Calgary Southwest.
And that is correct. You get all 3 points from this. Very interesting. Interesting. 2 leaders, right? Well, I mean, Harper was not ever a leader of these parties.
Well, he was a leader of the Alliance.
Leader. When? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. He organized a merger with Mr. MacKay. Yes, absolutely. Okay.
That's why he had the by-election. That's why he needed a seat.
Now, this one is a little more obscure. Maybe it's not to you, it was to me, so we'll see. Eric, the Terrebonne by-election was not the first one that had been declared void by the courts. It actually happened a few times in the past half-century. Now, I would like you to tell me, the most recent one outside of Terrebonne, I'll give you a hint. It took place in 1990. Now, I would like you to tell me who won the by-election eventually and which riding it was. And there's a free hint if you need it.
It was a riding in the GTA or in Toronto. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. It was... Oh, God. It was...
On the night of the 88 election, the PC candidate was declared the winner. Then there were allegations of miscounting and something. And then it was overturned. And then eventually the Ontario court threw it out.
Was it...
Yep.
Was the winner Maurizio Bevilacqua?
How the hell do you know that?
Okay.
Seriously, man. Yes, it was.
The riding was... what was the riding? I feel like it was a...
I'll give you the point anyway.
It was a Vaughan or a Markham.
Well, the thing is, here's the thing. Monsieur Bevilacqua was eventually the mayor of Vaughan, or Vaughan as you say in your language. But that riding was York North, and I'm giving you the point because you remember that.
Okay.
Bevilacqua. Maurizio. Okay, you're sweeping this right now. You have 5 points. You already have.
Nearby. It's not mine.
It's all right. Okay, Eric. A by-election took place on August 17th, 1981, in the riding of Joliette. I would like you to tell me who the MP was who resigned that seat, and then who the MP was who won the by-election on August 1981.
I know this. This is Roch Lassalle, who resigned to run as the leader of the Union Nationale in the 81 election, provincially, and then when they
didn't go so well,
absolutely
right?
butt kiss, he went back to being an MP.
So Monsieur Roch-Lassalle resigned his seat to run provincially, did very poorly, and then ran in his own by-election and won it. And that is correct. People in Joliette really liked him. They liked him so much that he was the only non-liberal MP in Quebec at that point. Okay. So you're sweeping the floor here. My last one is a by-election version of Rainbow or Sweep.
Oh.
So I'm going to give you 3 by-elections that occurred between the 97 and 2000 election. You have to tell me if it was a rainbow or a sweep, so if the same party won all 3, or if 3 different parties won on 3, and which parties. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Now, Port Moody, Coquitlam, Saskatoon, Rosetown, Biggar, and St. John's West. Now, they're not neighboring as they usually are because these are by-elections. So, was it a rainbow? Was it a sweep? And by which party?
Oh, that's not easy.
Port Moody, Coquitlam, Saskatoon, Rosetown, Biggar, and St. John's West.
Well, I mean, St. John's West, you can rule out the alliance, or they would not have won, or reform, whichever party was. Would the NDP have won St. John's West? Oh, they might have.
Would the dates help you?
Sure.
Because, all right, I got to tell you that I had to change my question because at first I had King's Hants in there. And you just spoiled my quiz there. So the Port Moody Coquitlam occurred in March 98. The Saskatoon Rosetown Biggar occurred in November 99. And the St. John West occurred in May 2000. So consecutive years. 98, 99, and 2000.
Okay, well, the PCs weren't winning by-elections, so it wouldn't have been them. So it would have been either the Liberals or the NDP. Really, the Liberals or the NDP. I can't see there would be another option. I'm going to say, in that case, I don't think... St. John's West is really screwing with me. I will say it was a rainbow... No.
It was a rainbow.
Oh, okay.
Now, which party won where? No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, which party won where? St. John's West. Oh, God, who is St. John's West? Who was it? Oh, it would have been, was it Tobin? Was he there at that point? Okay, so I'm going to say it was Liberal in St. John's West, NDP in Port Moody, and Alliance in Saskatoon.
Well... I guess you have to have a special point for that because you're wrong in all 3. But it is a rainbow.
Okay. What was the answer?
The Liberals won Port Moody Coquitlam, which is surprising. But the NDP won Saskatoon Rosetown Biggar, and the PCs won St. John West.
Did they?
I know,
Who was it?
It was Loyola Hearn, May 15, 2000, in the last gasp of the PCs. They won that by-election. I had King Hansen there, by the way, as a question, and I also had another by-election that occurred on September 11, 2000. It was in Okanagan-Coquihalla, but you mentioned it in the quiz. I had to improvise like this because you know everything. So you got gold, my friend. You have 6 out of 7 points. Congrats. I know it's hard to miss the last question, but you got gold. So that's what matters.
All right. Let's move to the number of the week. Do you want to go first, or should I go first?
I mean, I would go for the number of the week with my Palos poll because I commissioned it and I found it fascinating. But Christine Fréchette has an even rating, favorable, unfavorable, right? Which is not that great. But considering her party has been in power for 8 years and she's replacing a premier whose net favorability was in the minus 50s and 60s late, this is a big improvement. But a lot of people still don't have strong opinion on Christine Fréchette. She has her work cut out for her. And so I wonder if the CEQ picks up a few more points away from the PQ and the Liberals, we could have a complete mayhem of a three-way race in Quebec.
Gonna be a wild one. Okay, my number of the week is gonna be 61%. This was in the Angus Reid poll. They asked Canadians if you had to prioritize economic growth or environmental protection, which one would you choose? 61% chose economic growth, 39% chose environmental protection. That is a big shift because as recently as 2021, it was 37-63 in the other direction. So we've definitely seen a big swing in terms of how people are prioritizing these things when it comes to like pipelines. And I think that is a key kind of thing to think about with the announcements that we're expecting to have this week, that a lot of the conventional wisdom when it comes to pipeline politics has changed in just the last few years. Donald Trump has done it. In this poll, you had 59% of British Columbians prioritizing economic growth. In Quebec, you had 52% prioritizing economic growth. Swings of 20, 15 points since like the Trudeau years. So the whole idea that, well, pipelines is going to blow up in the Liberals' face in British Columbia, have not seen a big sign of that in the voting intentions. They're doing even better than they were when the MOU came out. And the polls don't suggest that British Columbians react in the same way as they used to about this issue. So something to keep in mind. Sometimes we've got to change our priors about how the regionalization of our politics changes, because sometimes it does. So
absolutely. Yep.
All right. Well, that'll be it for this week. If you'd like to get the early and ad-free episodes every week, go to thenumberspod.ca. We have bonus episodes. Since we're going to do Les Shift next week, we'll have a bonus episode probably, I guess, in 2 weeks or so. We'll see how that's going to play out. But if you want to support the podcast, go to thenumberspod.ca. You can also join the Discord, which is still very lively and very useful. So for that, I hope you have a good weekend. The Habs are playing tonight.
Playing tonight and playing Saturday. So we'll It's by the way, the Quebec poll that I commissioned, it was important to avoid polling, fielding on game night because 3 million Quebecers are not available. So
with reason.
Yes, so go Habs, go. We'll see how it turns out against the Sabres. So.